E2000. Ooh, I'm representing Eyeseeme. Let's do it. Aha. I see me. 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 Hope bunch of them see themselves in
All right, all right. Good evening, everybody. Good evening, good evening. Welcome to the Eyeseeme Spotlight Series. Can you guys hear me okay? Want to make sure. Sounds good? Okay, great, good. Welcome. I just wanted to give a minute or so to allow people to chime in, to come in into the webinar as well as on Facebook as well. Welcome to the Eyeseeme Spotlight Series again. We have some great guests here today. But Eyeseeme Spotlight Series, myself and my wife started Eyeseeme about going on 6 years now, 6 years ago. And based upon our experience and the difficulty in finding literature, children's books that really reflected our children's beauty, their hair, their skin, the legacy and contributions of African Americans to this country, just was really difficult to feed them that information in a child-friendly way. So we worked really hard to scour and find what we could, but it was difficult. And so what we decided to do was to create a bookstore focused just on that, really. We spoke to teachers and other parents who also had similar frustrations. So we wanted to kind of do something about it. So we're located in University City, Missouri. Brick and mortar bookstore, also online at www.eyeseeme.com. And so we actually started the Spotlight series so that we could connect our customers, our audience, and promote various books that are out there you may not know about, as well as connect you with the authors that have put them together. So welcome everybody that's here. We're going to jump into discussion, but first, just a little bit of housekeeping is, if you're there, make sure in the chat, just let us know and say hi. Let us know where you're from. If you're representing an organization or a school, let us know as well, just to say hello. If you have any questions for us and for the authors / editors, put them in the Q&A section, and we'll have them answered as well. And spread the word. Share if you're on Facebook. Share this so other people can jump on. Maybe some colleagues you may have, parents or teachers as well that may be interested in this topic. Definitely spread the word. So we're going to have a very fruitful conversation. So our topic today and the book that we're actually going to be speaking about is called Strong Black Girls Reclaiming Schools in Their Own Image. Strong Black Girls Reclaiming Schools in Their Own Image. And we're just delighted and honored that we have two of the editors / authors that are here with us, Dr. Apugo, as well as Dr. Mawhinney. They're both here, and I'm going to let them introduce themselves, but let me just give you a little background about the book, a little summary about it. And it is published by Teachers College Press. It's Strong Black Girls lays bare the harm Black women and girls are expected to overcome in order to receive an education in America. This edited volume amplifies the routinely muffled voices and experiences of Black women and girls in schools through storytelling, essays, letters, and poetry. The authors make clear that the strength of Black women and girls should not merely be defined as the ability to survive racism, abuse, and violence. Readers will also see resistance and resilience emerge through the central themes that shape these reflective coming-of-age narratives. Each chapter is punctuated by discussion questions that extend the conversation around the everyday realities of navigating K-12 schools, such as sexuality, intergenerational influences, self-love, anger, leadership, aesthetic trauma, hair, body image, erasure, rejection, and unfiltered Black girlhood. Definitely topics here. I was very excited about this book and about this conversation. I have two girls myself who've gone through K-12, definitely a lot of these topics are things that they had to face while they were in school, a lot of different things. So I'm sure many of you in earshot also can maybe relate to some of these topics that we're going to jump in. So I'm really excited about more moving forward. So again, just raise your hand if you have any questions, put it in the Q&A. and we can get started with our conversation. So, without further ado, I'd like to introduce Dr. Danielle Pugo, is Assistant Professor of Education at Virginia Commonwealth University, as well as Dr. Lynnette Mawhinney, Associate Professor and Chair of the Department of Urban Education at Rutgers University in Newark, which is my alma mater, by the way. Definitely, doctors, I'm glad that you guys are here. Please give us a little background about your professional career and how you came to cut together in order to put this book together. Welcome. You guys could unmute. There you go.
So I can start off by just giving a little bit of background about the book and how the book came to be. So what's interesting, so the other editor who's not here, want to give her a shout out, Dr. Afiya Mbilishaka. She is a clinical therapist and also a professor too, which I think is really important because Danielle and myself are teacher trainers. And so we're coming from this educational standpoint where Afiya is coming from this, therapy standpoint, which I think made a beautiful marriage for the book. But how the book came to be is we all did a chapter for another edited volume that was doing a call out. And those sister scholars said, you know what? We're not going to put this in our book because we think this can be its own book. And so they gave us kind of uplifted us to think bigger and larger, and we did that. So we put a call out to authorship for the vision, which was basically we wanted to have Black women either speaking about their experiences in schools or Black girls themselves. The youngest author in this book is a 5th grader at the time. She's now a 6th grader. And so that was really important for us because oftentimes Black girls are not really talked about when it comes to K-12 schooling, or there's others doing the talking for them. So we wanted to take a whole different stance on this book. And we did this call out. We got 85 submissions, which is just I've done other edited volumes. I've never had anything like it before. We were honestly overwhelmed. But it made us even clarify our mission even more of the, 8 chapters that we were able to pick. We wanted to make sure that they also touched on some of these other 85 voices that were coming through to make sure that we're really trying to represent the whole. We wanted to take everybody, but again, that's a really large book and a very expensive book that no one would buy. We need to make it sure it's a book that everyone can buy. So that's how it came to be. We really spent a labor of love trying to figure out, how the volume should come together, who the authorship should be, how are they speaking to different areas of school, whether it's, Autumn Griffin's chapter, which reminisces on 3 generations of Black women and her family and their schooling experiences around silence, whether it's about hair in schools, by Sierra Kaler Jones, whether it's about, thinking about sex education and the adultification of, Black girl bodies in schools by Taylor, why am I forgetting her last name? What's her last name?
Taylor Tucker.
Tucker, thank you. Or is it about speaking about Black girl magic and what does that really mean and complicating that a little bit? So, we're really proud of what we put together. It is an academic press, but we were very specific about we want this to be for everybody. So that's just the medium to get it out there, but it's a book that literally another, 5th grader could pick up and read and understand, that, other Black women and girls can pick up and read to maybe reflect, reminisce. Those who are teaching, Black women and girls or work with Black women and girls, to have them pick up and to understand, because it's also a tool too. So in this book, each chapter has reflective questions in the back. So it's an active tool that people can use to dialogue and have conversation with. What does this mean for their community? What does this mean for parents? So I'll just stop there, but I think, just to intro the book, but I think we're very proud of this. because there's a lot that's being said here with the authorship that's in it.
I echo everything Lynnette just said. And I just want to say too, Jeffrey, I'm so happy to be here and just thank you for all the work that you're doing in the community. I can only imagine how powerful your presence is there. And so I just want to say thank you. We're so grateful. We're always, of course, grateful for Black-owned bookstores to come through. You know, last time we had a conversation with a Black woman who owns a bookstore, community book center in New Orleans, Louisiana. And one thing that she came up with is she said, don't billionize BSOs, billionize Black people, you know, so buy from. So if you're out there listening, make sure you continue to support Jeffrey and his wife by patronizing and purchasing the book through their store and through their venue, because we're so grateful to have this platform. And you know, I really want to also add to what Lynnette was talking about behind just the purpose for the book, and myself entering into this project as a teacher, a K-12 teacher, fugitive, if you will, and now a teacher educator at the university level and as a faculty member. It's so incredibly important for us to capture the experiences and the variety of experiences that Black girls have in K-12. And so what we find with this particular work is that a lot of the contributors, the authors in each individual chapter, really put their individual lens based in their lived experiences as a Black girl on specific concepts. Right. And so one of the chapters specifically talks about the generational impact of, you know, something that happened to your grandmother got passed down to your mother, and then now you're all of a sudden shackled by that. And so in that chapter, Dr. Autumn Griffin talks about silencing and why she was silenced. And so that's so very powerful, because we see a lot of that happening in K-12, specifically with curricula, you know, so we see that there's not a wide representation, if any, of Black girls doing anything or contributing to their own curriculum or the way they want to see and envision themselves in schools. And so beyond that, we really, Lynnette and I as educators, and Afiya as a strong supporter, whose husband has been a longtime educator and supporter, and her parents, thought really closely about how we might bring educators into talking about some of these really powerful concepts in the book. And so, as Lynnette mentioned, there's criminalization of the Black body that comes up. There is, you know, that whole silencing piece. There's discrimination, you know, there's adultification. There is, you know, so a variety of different concepts. And so the purpose of some of the discussion questions, if you are, you know, involved in with Black girls in any way, shape, or form, these are entry points to having those conversations and kind of unpacking those really complex concepts as they relate to Black girls' experiences. And so we really wanted to center that and elevate that and show the complexities within those experiences, because oftentimes we have this narrative of pain and suffering. And as one of our interviews cited, you know, sometimes I think about Sophia from The Color Purple. It said, all my life I had to fight, you know. And so it's really important for us to capture, you know, the experience itself, and then also tell the story about what methods and modes of resistance are Black girls employing in these spaces to kind of talk back and push back and disrupt and completely shake up their environment. And so you see that in all the chapters. And so each author has a wonderful representation of what they've done and how they've come of age in the K-12 space and even beyond.
Jeffrey, you're on mute. Sorry.
Good. So excited. I forgot to unmute. No, I would say amazing. You know, I commend you guys, because a lot of times as adults and academics or professionals, we see a problem and then we can analyze it, but then we speak about it. And so it's coming from us like, oh, they should be doing this. But it's so amazing when you listen to young people and just let them talk. Like just let them talk, let them express themselves. Like you said, being able to not just see the pain or the quote unquote impression, but also, like you said, the resilience, the power, the creativity, to be able to kind of, the vision to kind of see and imagine, and just the fortitude to make it through any of those issues. So it's not just one dimensional. We do a lot of book fairs at schools, and so I remember one time setting up in one of the rooms for like a middle school, and a couple young people sort of passed by and looked in, and as soon as they saw all the books had like African Americans on the covers, they just said, "Oh, civil rights." Like it's like that's the only dimension, that we can talk about if we talk about Black books in a similar fashion, right? Like it's not just about, I think is it W. Du Bois speaks about what is it like to be a problem, like that's not the definition where they're defining themselves. What I'm hearing, but they don't see themselves that way, and so we shouldn't put those labels on them, and because labels are important. So no, I commend you for that. Letting the young people speak and letting them tell the story and not just being told what their story is just so important, I think. The other thing too is that one of the questions that I had to do with like who this book is for. And so, because when people see Teachers College Press, like, oh, it's a teacher's book. But I'm glad that you clarified that to say, it's for all levels, whether it's children or parents or teachers as well, would be able to get some value out of reading this book as well. So I thought that was really good.
Absolutely. And you know what I'm finding too, and I'm finding that folks that are preparing to be teachers are really getting a lot out of the book as well. And that's where we see most of the shift happening, and that's where how we need to kind of break down or shake up those structures that are there that tell us or send these covert messages to pre-service teachers that these people don't matter. We don't really need to know a lot about their experiences because we just need to figure out how to adapt them, assimilate them to white norms of society and culture. And so that's a really big part of what we did. And Lynnette was really, really vital because Lynnette is everything in publishing. Like she's published a lot. And so we really relied on her insights to say, look, if I wanted to teach this as a course, as a college professor, or as a person who's facilitating workshops, or a person who's a community activist, or running a community organization, even in the system involved, with system involved youth, that was really important for her that was a huge contribution from Lynnette by saying, let's do these discussion questions, because this is going to be a pivotal point for folks to really get it, and a jumping off point of like, okay, I read the chapter, now what's next?
Right.
So, and so we've since writing the book, since kind of framing the book or submitting the proposal, we've come to see that, people from the social work world, physicians, again, as I said, people that are coming into contact with system involved youth or youth that have been traumatized, victimized, and terrorized in society, who happen to be most often Black girls. We're finding that there's value in understanding these stories, because we know there's a disproportionate amount of people who are actually servicing or providing care for Black girls in those spaces. Oftentimes they don't look like us, right? Mm-hmm. So I have a friend who works in a juvenile justice facility in Dallas, who actually also runs a homeless shelter right next to the facility, or is embedded in the facility. And, there's not a whole lot of people that are, in those positions of leadership making those decisions about what workshops happen, how, what text are we going to use to know about these experiences. Those people aren't Black folks. And we want to be very clear in this book is that this book was written for and about Black women, right? Nice. And so also, and Afiya, Dr. Mbilishaka, who had a schedule conflict and could be here today, was a huge factor in shaping that piece as it relates to this sort of narrative therapy piece, in which we talk about how narratives can be used to unpack what has been processed oftentimes as traumatic experiences. And so I've had about 6 or 7 people tell me, whoa, I read this story. I had a 63-year-old woman tell me, she's like, I'm not happy to see that this is still going on, but I can relate to this because this happened to me and I experienced this. And so really thinking about that healing component, and Afiya really was really instrumental in helping us kind of frame that whole, using the book also as a tool, a restorative tool, if you will, toward healing and toward how can we learn how to restory these experiences and reclaim them, as the book is entitled also, as instances of how we shook up the spaces that we're in, and how we came in and claimed that as Black girls, and remembering it in a different way in order to process it differently. And that was really important for us.
Nice. Oh yeah, definitely value in being able to identify or validating some of the things you're feeling. I know sometimes it could be, I'm going through something, whatever it could be in this space, and I don't know, do I have a right to go through to feel that way, or am I the only one that feels that way? It's not like something that is in topic conversation every day, but then be able to come across something, oh wow, that's to identify with that. That can be amazing, like you said, therapeutic. It could be validating, empowering. I think so. Again, that's fantastic. That's fantastic.
And just to add to what occurs to me as you're speaking is that we sometimes train Black girls to voice what's happening to us, or brush it off and say, oh, it wasn't that bad. Oh, you suck it up. You're like, you're strong, you're tough. And that's another concept that came up in the book too, is this whole notion of adultification, where Black girls are treated as if they're older and can endure more, and that they're strong and they're not worthy of being protected, thereby having Black girls be apprehensive about. And I know in my own experiences, there are things that have happened to me, well, certainly traumatic, that I just kind of brushed off and just was like, okay, well, was it that bad, Danielle? It was. It was.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And that you have a right to be able to express yourself and be able to say when something is not, right, that you should be able to do that and feel empowered to do that in the space that you're in. So tell me more about that, the reclaiming piece. Like that's to me, that's very fascinating. And that sounds very interesting. Some of the stories that speak about the reclaiming piece, that, because a lot of times in going into schools, sometimes I would get the feeling like some of the Black students did not feel like this was their space, like they're a visitor there, but that part about reclaiming, to say, no, you have a right to be here. You this is your space, and you have a right to, make room for you. That's okay. But like you said, the whole silencing piece is kind of embedded in us a lot of times, and like you said, with Black girls in particular. So tell me more about the reclaiming piece. Like how did you see that evolving out of these stories?
Well, it's different, right? So for each author, but what is interesting is for some authorship, the reclaiming part came in the form of doing the chapter, right? So like being reflective and having this moment and making this like a tool of, look, here was my experience. Here's how I had to heal from it, and here's what can be done moving forward. That process was reclaiming. For some of the other authors, it was like they might share, I'm just thinking about like Helena Donato Sapp, who's our fifth grader, who did a phrase poem, and it was rooted in not only what she learned in school, but also at home. And so for her, and it was around these like Black women who have spoken to her in history, current and, who have passed. And so for her, the reclaiming is like, here's what I'm learning and here's what it means for me, right? As a Black girl in schools moving forward. So it's interesting. Everyone has this different way of how they reclaimed. Some of it could have been the actual process of the chapter, and some of it's like in the moment, and some of it was going back, here's what needs to be done differently. Taylor Tucker talks about like her journey, thinking about Black bodies and sex ed, and at the end she's like, look, like here are some actual tools and references that people need to know. And not only that, she just shared in a panel that we're having that she was an undergrad when she wrote this. So she's now going to be teaching in Philly. And she's like, I actually have every intention of her way of reclaiming is she's going back into schools to be a teacher and to bring some of this stuff, you know, around sex ed forward in the classroom, right? And so it's really fascinating how reclaiming happens, but it's not every author is the same. And that's what I also think is beautiful. We can reclaim these spaces that were not made for us in very different ways, and that it's still possible. If there's, you know, a Black girl that picks up this book and it starts to relate to some of these stories, and she's still in it, you know, like in this K-12 system, hopefully it gives some light of like, I still have time to reclaim this space to be for me and what it needs to be. Or to have, you know, a parent who might have a kid who's going through the same experience, right? Or the teacher in the classroom who starts to reflect it. Like, this is, again, an active tool for others to make a call to reclaim the spaces, not, you know, for Black kids and for other kids of color who are often marginalized because, again, K-12 schools were not made for us.
Yeah, absolutely. Oh, great. We have a couple questions too. Let's see. What was the process you went through in order to put this book together, and how did you guys come together to collaborate on this book? I think you went through that a little bit, but about coming together, but you could summarize that again, I guess, for those.
Yeah, I'll kind of share my perspective on how it came together, which
Okay.
it involved a lot of politicking on my behalf, because again, as I said, Lynnette and Afiya both are just like brilliant, and you know, I was hoping that they would drink the Kool-Aid and turn this into this particular project. But I think for me, I grew up in rural North Louisiana, backwoods, one stoplight. And the driving force for me initially, when we submitted to to just tell our stories, to kind of narrate our experiences and what had happened. And so for me, I thought that it would be really powerful that we kind of sort of add into the narrative of Black girls, you know, what geographically, what's happening in these spaces. And so we oftentimes see these huge data sets about Black girls from the big cities, New York, LA, Chicago. And so for the most part, the experiences of geographically of Black girls are not really checked for. And so I was hoping to get, just a few people that would be interested in telling their stories from different places. And so we were really blessed to get a huge bank of authors and contributors that we found a common thread. And so it's kind of, in the research process, is interesting because, you're oftentimes trained in your respective programs to, think of a question and stick with that and then collect your data. But for us, it was more so we were really responsive to the proposals that we got. And so while we went into the mission with one particular thing in mind, which was like, oh, we think it's going to be about this. But when the chapter started pouring in, we were like, this is gonna be about something else. So we were really responsive to the calls that the submissions that we got in, and thankfully for us, they were all telling a similar story. There were these common themes: the silencing, the identity, the negotiation of identity, psychological distress, the resistance. What were they doing to talk back and fight back and reclaim these settings? It's such, with a small person, even if you're reclaiming it through your heritage or lineage, as one of the chapter talks about, what that means to kind of to reclaim it using your familial structure. And so I thought that was really interesting and powerful. And so we were able to move that process. And again, fortunately enough, we got our proposal together. And we reached out to some editors, and people really liked it. They liked the idea, and we, for me, I was still more so like, oh, is this really gonna happen? Is this, and so therein comes, Lynnette, our, veteran, very seasoned author who's like, yeah, we just need to do this. It's gonna be fine. Like, we'll just do this. So essentially talking me off the ledge all the time. And then we were having our own personal things going on at the time. So I was like, you know, I could have like, okay, let's just do something else. Cause I'm at this point, I'm like, okay, there were a lot of hiccups in the process. There were a lot of, we learned a lot in the process. So I think but the most powerful piece was the idea that these 9 individuals entrusted us to complete the process. And so I had to step back, and I kind of had to process within myself. This is not about you. Get out your feelings. Yeah. Get out your feelings, because this is going to heal a bunch of people. So girl, you need to get it together and go ahead and go through the process. They already said they into it. You know, the people want to publish it. So let's make it about the people who are entrusting us with these stories and doing the stories, doing our due diligence and doing justice to these stories. And then also thinking about the vulnerability of someone to even write about their experiences and you know, have the nerve to share them. So I'm very grateful for that. And I think that's sort of how the process went along from my perspective.
How long was that process from the proposal idea to actual publishing?
Ooh, 2.5 years, I think. Yeah, two and a half years. Wow. Mm-hmm. Maybe a little longer, but here's what's also interesting. What we did, like, as a seasoned veteran, I kind of led the process, but I don't really think I explained why. So we did something different. We actually collected and got the volume together and then shopped it out. Oftentimes it's the reverse, that, you know, you'll pitch the idea, the publisher will take it, and then you'll look for authorship. But the reason why I was pushing for that is because it's like, here's our book. This is what we want. We're not going to compromise, right? And then a publisher can take it as is and love what we have or not. But oftentimes I feel like sometimes publishers can push the mission a little bit away, right? Mm. And so we did the reverse process, and I think it worked really effectively here, because it made everything beautiful and kept it all intact for the vision that we had. So.
And that's why my nerves were so bad, because I'm like, why are we getting these first? We don't even know if we have, and that's faith, right? So yeah. I forever admire Lynnette for even like thinking like, oh, and this is always her disposition. Oh, okay, yeah, we'll do that. Yeah, that's fine. That's fine. I'm like, oh my God. Never get published. And what if so you know, I think that was really really a learning experience also. And knowing that we're doing it for somebody who is endeavoring to do the same thing, and having that blind faith of, okay, we got 80 something people, gotta kind of do something.
Yes. What feedback have you gotten from the authors themselves? They must be excited that they're published authors. That's amazing. Especially the 5-year-old. I should have brought the 5-year-old on too, because that would have been amazing.
Yeah, the 5th grader. Yeah, she's
fifth grader. Yeah.
Listen, Helena is, you know, zagging and zipping all over the West Coast. She is presenting. She is, you know, she has her own platform. She has very supportive parents. You know, so she's extremely excited to be a part of the collection, and we are thrilled that she, you know, agreed to submit something. And so we've got good feedback from the authors, and I've for the most part, you know, we've all tried to keep them as engaged as possible, because we want to, there's something continuing to generate here, and we like it.
Yes. It feels like the beginning of something, right? It's an accomplishment, but it's like, I feel like this is like the seed that spurs a lot of other things. You know, a lot of people involved. So like you said, your effort is a contributory to a lot of people's efforts coming together. So I'm glad you came off the ledge and continued down the path. What was your background in literature? That was one of the questions from one of the individuals. Any background in literature?
What? Just like, I don't think I understand the question. I'm sorry.
I think any author, any books before this book, I think.
Oh, okay. So I've written a number of books, other academic books, and edited a couple other volumes, all really dealing around either teachers of color or teacher education. But on the other side, I'm also a children's book author. So Lulu, the one and only, please get it at Eyeseeme because they carry it. But my children's book. So my whole mission, as you can kind of hear with this, is I'm going to write the things that I think matter and then find a place where that fits. Yeah. So the children's book side of my writing came from, I wasn't the kind of like the same mission of why you even have like Eyeseeme, right? As a teacher, as a student, I never saw myself in literature. As a teacher, that was still a problem and I would have to fight for stuff. So I finally said, well, why don't I just start to write something and actually create a resource for it? So there's like a free parent and teacher resource for that too. So, so lots of books on my end, which I'm very thankful for, because only recently did I even call myself a writer. To say I write, but I've taken that identity now. I think this is my 6th book, so I can say that.
And plus you guys have material in this book as well, right? Right? Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. Can you talk about your pieces you have for this book and the inspiration on those pieces in the book?
Yeah, we do the introduction. So Lynnette, Afiya, and I really took the approach toward the introduction of kind of telling a broad story of how this project came together, and then sort of directing the reader through what they were getting prepared to see, and giving some context and how we wanted to frame, how we want the reader to sort of frame their imagination as they're writing it. So there are several calls throughout the introduction that sort of call people to, you know, one of the quotes I have, and we wrote in there were, you know, reclaiming the rich lineage of Black women. And so what that, you know, that means something powerful. And so I'm not just talking about the Black women that we bring up during Black History Month. I'm talking about could be in your family, your community, you know, could be you. So thinking about how we want people to resurrect their own stories and then sort of use that as a way to navigate throughout the book. And so we introduced some key terms like, you know, narrative therapy, the whole restoring piece, and then we really sort of get into the layout of what we know that's happening. What's the narrative of thus far on Black girls in education research, which is like, if you blink, you'll miss it. So there's not a lot, and you know the pieces that are there. You know, we have some amazing and brilliant Black women scholars who have been writing about Black girlhood in the education context. You know, Ruth Nicole Brown. We have, you know, people really committed to that and that have said, let's elevate that. Let's talk about that. And then we kind of use that as, okay, so we have to make the call to understand these Black girls' experiences in schools from a variety of perspectives. We have to add that we want this book to play a role in nuancing what we see oftentimes in the literature as problematized as, you know, this is why Black girls can't do that. This is why we can't, you know, but what exactly are the barriers that are structurally embedded that are allowing for Black girls to have to even navigate and resist and reject? So we need to, so this is sort of the little seed that's planted, like, okay, here are these experiences, but then what about this environment that's sort of propelling or catapulting Black girls into, you know, survival mode. So, you know, that was really important for us to paint that picture.
Nice, like a guided tour. Yes, nice. Let me go with some of the questions. What advice would you give to someone who wants to have an impact on the way children are taught, more specifically in the school curriculum? What advice would you give to someone?
Speak up, right? So like I'll just say, maybe this is a parent who's asking, right? And how can they make a bigger impact, or a community member? Speaking up is huge. Parent voice is big, you know, whether it's PTA meetings or board meetings, like, come in. They are open spaces to say something and to bring your demands, and, you know, and bring other resources to say, hey, like, these things need to happen. Because if oftentimes, you know, especially with smaller schools, you know, the school board meetings, the community members don't really know that they can be as open as they are, compared to like urban ones where they're like huge, and, you know, sometimes there's even like cameras and stuff. But they are open spaces for the public, so make your voice heard. That's on a bigger platform, but on a smaller platform, sometimes teachers have a lot. Like, they have a lot on their plate right now, especially in the midst of a pandemic. You know, someone asked me in an interview the other day, like, what advice would you give teachers? I'm like, they don't need any more advice except for a hug and like, keep your head up because it's hard. And so, you know, they can't know or do everything. And so don't be afraid to, you know, to go to a teacher. They'd be grateful of like, hey, here are some resources I came across. This might be helpful. They'll be very thankful for that, because sometimes they just can't get out to, you know, to read up and know what's happening really until summer. So, you know, don't be afraid to share those things, and, you know, as a nice gift, you know, get them, go to Eyeseeme and buy Strong Black Girls and give it as a gift, right? Because it's meant to be a tool. So
Well,
just
thank you for it.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
Teach one.
That's right.
Yeah,
That's right.
exactly. And then usually teachers will share, you know, amongst their little teacher community too, and pass stuff around. And, you know, so it's like small picture of just like, hey, here's something, to big picture of like, hey, district, you need to hear these things. And these are what we, you know, these are what, this is what we're thinking, what we want.
Right. Absolutely. Let's see. Why did you choose to write about Black girls as opposed to Black boys?
Because we are Black girls, and
I'm not getting attitude, but why not?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Why not Black?
Yeah.
I'm gonna be honest. There's a lot of literature about Black boys in the like teacher ed world, believe it or not, and not as many about Black girls. So, but I'll just go with Danielle. Why not?
Yeah.
Why not?
After reading this book, what do you expect a teacher educated to do? Is there a specific road to making this lasting change that you would advise?
Yeah, I can go from how I approach these types of questions in my own courses. And that is, you know, we really need to start with the question of what makes us worthy of Black girls? What makes us worthy? What makes them worthy? What makes us worthy to share the learning space with Black girls in schools, in classrooms? And so if we can start thinking about not necessarily approaching Black girls with, okay, what can I do to fix you? Or what can I do, you know, what can I do to make you fit into this space? Yet, how can I learn from these individuals? In what ways are Black girls going to come into my classroom and completely add to the culture and environment that I have here? And so, you know, the vast majority, over 80%, Lynnette, I know you correct me on these stats, of the teaching workforce is white women. Right. And so, you know,
Yeah.
Thereby, A6, close, still ridiculous. Thereby, a lot of the women, a lot of the students I have are you know, young white women. And so it really starts from that place of sort of shaking up the belief that I have something to teach them. Like, I'm going to teach them. No. Because we know as a culture and who we are as Black people, that our ways of knowing and learning are essential. They're quite genius, if you will. And so if we can start from that perspective of how can I prepare this space? You know how you prepare for a queen, you prepare for a really esteemed guest that's coming to dinner, you prepare to go out. How can I prepare this space for these guests?
Yes.
Right? I go in the classroom.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. I love it.
How can I prepare this space? Yeah. Like, what can I do to serve you? Because it's a privilege to be in charge of somebody's kids. All of us on here have children. It's a privilege. We're not gonna send our kids anywhere, and we're not gonna send them to somebody we don't know or we don't like. So, you know, we have to put aside what we believe we have to really investigate the roles that we believe that we hold in people's lives, really interrogate that. And I haven't even touched the point about, you know, racism and systemic oppression and white supremacist thought and ideology and how it shows up, and these you know, systems of power that are at play alive and well. These power domains that are alive and well in schools, and we're having Black girls navigate them, and we are reinforcing them with the ways in which we teach. And so, as Lynnette said and mentioned, you know, it's oftentimes not about the big blow up things that happen in the media, or like, oh, this Black girl got arrested. Yes, that's horrific, and we should all be alarmed about that. But when we start to look at the everyday interactions with Black girls, like those micro interactions in terms of classroom, oh, look at your hair. Oh, did your hair grow overnight? Do you wash your locks? How do you wash it like that? Like those little micro assaults that happen just in a quick moment that register in our bodies. And so we have to think about, do I have any Black women from St. Louis on my wall? Do I have any Black women from St. Louis that are in my library in my school? Have I been to Eyeseeme this past year to figure out what ways can I bombard my classroom with Blackness? How do I even do that? And so that's really important that we create. My hair is gonna drive me crazy, y'all, because I washed it last night. Now it's trying to dry on its own, so forgive me. But I'm just like, how do we create this space? How can we create these affirmative spaces? If everywhere I go in my classroom, and I'm gonna speak from my experience growing up as a Black girl child in Louisiana, I ain't seen nobody that was from my community, for better or worse. And then we had a whole school named by a Black woman abolitionist who started. I didn't learn anything about her. I learned about her from my mother. And so, you know, these, like, how can we investigate what these geographic spaces have to offer? How can we leverage what's already there? And that's the other thing I want to say before I go on a huge rant, and I'll just end it with this. I like to talk to my pre-service teachers about policy. Policy is great, policy is wonderful, but policy is also a very slow process. And so in lieu of the revolution, there are free, I repeat, free 99 things that you can do tomorrow to prepare your space. There are things that you can do in lieu of the revolution. You can start by actually knowing the familial dynamics of your Black girl child students. You can start making sure that they know that they're protected. They're protected in your space. You can start training your other students how they protect one another when something's not right or when something happens. That's how we start, and that's how we don't get things like January the 6th. You know, and people think, oh, you know, we need to go into the MLK schools and the inner city schools and talk to these kids. No, y'all need to be in the suburbs too.
That's right, 100%.
Building them in the suburbs, they're the ones who haven't really, or not getting this message that there are enough other groups of people that built the country. Right. So it's even more imperative in homogenous spaces to deliver this message. And so I say that because I work with urban teachers, and that's the message. Like, let's do this and do that. But it's like, yo, it has to permeate all the spaces that people are preparing themselves to be in the company of Black girls. So that's in rant.
Oh, I love it. I love it. No, absolutely. That's amazing. Absolutely.
Seeing all Danielle's amazingness and all the realness that she's doing.
Oh man, you hit the nail on the head a few times. Absolutely. Thank you for your voice, and really, I identify a lot of things that you're saying. Again, I have daughters, I have sons too, but I have daughters, and navigating K through 12, working with the teachers and school boards and administrators, predominantly white environments a lot of times, and it's tough. And but I love the way you characterized it. It's how can you make a space and for to make it welcoming, for my royal family to attend. Woo me to come in a 10-year school. It really, yeah. That's the way to think about it, because you think about our children, they're the most precious thing, and I'm not gonna outsource that experience to them.
No,
No, I love that.
we're not sending Gabby to nobody that's not gonna appreciate her culture now. We're
Absolutely,
not doing it.
absolutely. That's right. That's right. That's right. And wow, yeah, I love it. I love it. Let me see. From Facebook, when a question came, while collecting the submissions, what are some of the biggest obstacles facing young Black girls? I think you kind of went through it, but maybe what pops? I think you said reclaiming was one of them. Silencing was another. Any others, just to kind of reiterate?
Yeah, we had a lot of submissions from Black girls who were in all white learning spaces.
Mm-hmm.
A lot.
Right.
And the traumas that they had there. That was another big theme.
Yeah. I know here at the bookstore, one of the biggest things has to do with hair. And that's what they come in for a lot. A lot of times they will come in and ask for that. And I know my wife she worked with doing some after school programs and firsthand had go through those conversations as well. So
And
I
I'm glad that you said that, because if you go and pick up Strong Black Girls, you will get a broad brushstroke of tracing back how we came to view our hair as Black people by our hair historian, Dr. Afiya Mbilishaka, who's one of the editors on the volume. And so she was really intentional about picking Sierra Kaylor Jones, Dr. Kaylor Jones, her chapter on hair, which the chapter is titled Curls, Coils, and Codes, an examination of Black girls' hair as forms of expression and resistance. And so if you are out there and you're looking for a one-stop source, chock full of citations, chock full of references that can give you that historical view, and also with trickled in some lived experiences from the author. Very powerful. Former Miss New Jersey talks about that experience. And so, wow. So, if you want to, aside from as a parent and really offering, and I know, Jeffrey, you're all about bringing a historical perspective, because I think that's a huge part of your legacy there at the bookstore, is like that historical piece is so important, because that allows us to kind of trace these things back through history. It goes, and Dr. Afiya Mbilishaka talks a lot about, hair and hair culture in ancient African society. So really unpacking what our hair means. And in the chapter, she also talks about, the chapter author also talks about like these psychologically distressing moments with hair and what that means. And so we actually, Dr. Fee and I have written a paper about Black women's hair narratives in schools. And so where Black women are recalling these stories about their hair, and they have, of course, characterized or, of course, processed this in the body as trauma, as a traumatic experience. And so I think it's powerful. Also, the chapter cites the Crown Act, which, if you don't know, I'm not sure if Missouri has, if I'm a betting woman, which I'm not, but I would say has not adopted the Crown Act. But the Crown Act, which stands for, is an acronym for creating a respectful and open workspace for natural hair. And when we talk about, we're kind of playing with the term workspace in this book and thinking about centering schools and like what that means for schools. And so that's the piece of legislation that's been pushed. And Dr. Afiya Mbilishaka, one of the editors on here, had gone before Congress to testify. She cited one of our articles and really pushed that through. And so that's, I urge you, if you want to dig into this conversation and sort of figure out ways that you can advocate in your own space, this is a perfect chapter to do that.
Yep, absolutely. And I think, how many states do you know have actually have state legislation that enacted the Crown Act? Do you know how many states have done that?
I don't know the exact number, but it's still in the single digits.
Yeah.
Low single digits.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, and it's funny that Dr. Afiya got this question on an interview we had, and I think she's mentioned between 6 and 8, somewhere around there. But it's
yeah.
you know.
Yeah, well, it's a start, so we just got to keep pushing it. Just keep pushing it, because to me that's like a no-brainer. Like why should my hair affect anything? That I don't understand. But of course, put the historical context to it, and you kind of see these institutions and these frameworks just continue to go with us, even though we go into the 21st century. We're still carrying this legacy and these minds, these ancient mind thoughts about each other, and that's terrible. So yeah, I think that's something we definitely should push, because that just doesn't make any sense. I see a question from Doreen Simpson, which is hey, shout out. Doreen Simpson is actually she's the executive director of Remember the 400 movement, and we've partnered with them quite a bit. And they do a lot of educational programs and bringing history into the schools and to the community. How do you affect change with schools to understand the necessity that these type of books are needed in their classrooms, and are schools receptive? Have they been receptive?
I think the how-to, I think we touched on a little bit. So, but let's hope they're receptive. I mean, there are some schools out there who are certainly receptive to hearing things. There's three categories: the ones who are receptive and do something, the ones who say they're receptive and do nothing, and then the ones who don't want to hear it, right?
Yeah.
So,
I understand.
Yeah. So the ones who are receptive and doing something, that's great, and keep, working in partnership to make change. And the ones who are, someone just interviewed me about this, right? The ones who are receptive, but not in word, but not in action, we've seen that a lot, right? After George Floyd and June came, all of a sudden, schooling and workplace, everyone had a social justice, right? Statement on their website, but who was actually doing it in action, right? But what I've been saying to folks, and there's been a couple conversations of, but they're not doing anything. I'm like, well, you can use the statements that they're putting out there on their website as part of your leverage to create action.
Yes.
Right.
Yeah. Absolutely.
They might have just done it for the movement, but now this creates an area of now it's in writing, and you can actually use that to help leverage to make stuff move forward. So,
right. 100%.
And for the ones who, have their fingers in the air and don't want to do anything, just try to be as loud as you can. And that's where kind of grassroots community gathering, all that stuff, can be really powerful.
Yeah. I'll get other parents, other teachers, maybe. Mm-hmm.
And I want to say this too, because I want to also say that this book is going to heal and free a lot of people. And I say free in this context is very important, because I feel like a lot of times we're on the hook as Black people to figure out how we're going to infiltrate these spaces and make this work. Right. When this is where just like Lynnette said, you had, bukus of people. I'm from Louisiana. We say buku. That means a lot. There were buku people stepping up. I'm an ally. I'm an accomplice. I'm performing, whatever the case may be. This is the opportunity for you to call them on their stance. If I know a book, these authors, that here's a recording, link it, go to their Facebook page, copy the link that Eyeseeme is going to provide after this show, and put this on every school district and say, here's the book, there could be, how can we facilitate a book talk at these schools? Yeah. So how can we do that? Now, we're not saying we don't work for free, except if you're Eyeseeme or Jeffrey, but we're not going to, we're professionals, and we do these types of things all the time for our jobs. And so when they're saying, oh, we want to, pay Black women, listen to Black women, and and it's not just Lynnette and I and Afiya and the authors of this chapter. There's countless other women in Missouri, St. Louis area who are doing this work, who have been doing this work. Lift up some of those women and engage them, because the reality of the situation is you don't really need to call somebody from, you know, the heavens in DC and Jersey when you got people right in the Midwest that know how to do the work. When you got people that are already doing the work. So let's leverage those individuals and have that spotlight shown. Now people are going to be resistant, but the thing is, like Lynnette said, going back to, well, this is what y'all was saying last summer. This is, you know, so what is, how are Black girls faring in your school? What's the progress report? We want to know. We want to know what is going on in these spaces. Are they well? And so, you know, somebody said something about this. I was on a call the other day, and this woman who is executive director, she's also an attorney, a civil rights attorney or special education. I can't think of her exact legal affiliation, but she's an attorney, and she runs this organization called Rise for Youth. And she said something really profound. She said, you know, there's a tribe in Africa that asks whenever any visitor comes, and she didn't name the tribe, but I wouldn't say that this is something that's unique to tribes, to this specific tribe. But they ask before they say anything, before they greet the person, how are the children? How are the children? That's the first thing that they, you know, ask. And so what if that was how we entered everything? How are the children? Because knowing that tells us so much about how we are doing as a society, as big people, how we're treating one another, and how we're creating this space. And so I think that that's really important that we do that, because they want us to not ask questions. They want us to forget about what they said. They want us to just go away quietly, but we're not. We're ringing the alarm. We're not letting up. Black girls that are out there, you're listening, and earshot parents, you know, we love you. We support you. Black girls, you don't need to do one more thing. You are enough. You're wonderful. You're beautiful. It's the big people around you that's messing up things in the way you need to navigate society. 100%. So big people mess it up, and the big people need to fix it. Point blank, period. So you are enough. You don't need to do nothing but keep doing what you're doing. Keep listening to your parents, your elders, and keep shining. Keep being unfiltered. Don't squash yourself. If they're uncomfortable with you, that's their problem. That's their problem. If they got a problem with you, that's their problem. So don't try to make other people comfortable, because it's not about them. It's about how the world can prepare and make room for you in this space. And so that's how we need to enter into schools, with that lens of, okay, is this space, you know, like how you go into Airbnb, you're like, can I live here? Can I be here? You go look for a new house. Do I like this neighborhood? That's how we need to be sniffing out these environments. Like, is this safe? So I just want to, you know, kind of make sure we round out with that, because that's really important to me.
That's amazing. And 100%. I mean, that's exactly, if people don't take anything else away from that concept that you articulated there, it's so profound. And that's a different way of looking at, you know, how do we reclaim our schools, right? How do we reclaim those schools? Absolutely. I applaud you guys again. Someone saying, yes, fabulous message. You know, a couple of the comments in the chat, like they're, you know, people are feeling that. So yeah, listen, if you guys are listening to me, you guys need to get a copy of this book. If you're a parent, if you're a child, if you're a teacher, especially administrator, you need to get, this is required reading. If you really are about trying to make some real positive change. Thank you guys so much for, you know, being on this program. We went a little over, but I could just talk to you guys all day, because this is important stuff, and you guys are doing the work and galvanizing all this information so that we can be enriched and allow us to really think about it in a different way, and hopefully spur on some further, you know, better actions moving forward. And that's about, like you were mentioning about how are the children. Absolutely. You know, it's like, I remember when I took skiing lessons at one point, the one thing they told you is like, listen, you're going so fast down the hill, you can't look at where you are. You got to look at where you want to be. And then you will automatically line up, you know, and it's the exact same thing. If you've got to look at where we want to be, and that's where our children are. So how are the children? How are the children doing? You know, and make sure and ask them. Yeah, don't assume, oh, they're fine. Ask them, because they're going to tell you, you know, give them that space so they can speak freely. thank you guys so much. Getting a lot of appreciations, in the chat for you guys and for your work, and wish you much success. Please come by eyeseeme.com. Stop by us at the store as well, and University City, and pick up a copy for yourself, and pick up a copy for your school. A great idea. Start the book club and book discussions. These are important topics,
Yes.
vital topics for us to be talking about.
And you can also go to strongblackgirls.org to keep up with any updates that we have about what's on the horizon for us, what we're currently involved in. And so we have, and Jeffrey, I'm gonna make sure our website administrator adds Eyeseeme Bookstore to the list of, we have a list of preferred vendors on the website. And so, we're happy to be a friend of the store now. And we want to add you. And so if you're buying through the website, please go and buy through our selected Black bookstore vendors. And we would love for you to support in that way. So thank you. Please, let's keep the conversation going.
Yes, absolutely. Thank you, Dr. Pugo. Thank you, Dr. Mawhinney. Thank you so much.
Thank
Great
you so
discussion.
much.
Absolutely. Wish you much luck and success. Have a great evening. Thank you, everybody. Again, it's the Eyeseeme Spotlight Series, where we bring the best and newest information concerning children's literature, to our audience. So thank you guys for attending. Have a good night.
Thank you.
Right. Take care.
Me, I see me, help bunch of them see themselves in